know they grip play with my money. The way you collect it from me, I want to romance your body. All up our romance alone. Oh my oh mema, oh mema, oh mema, oh mema. I will spray you in dollar. Royal back to send.
It's time for Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla. Stay tuned for insights, impact, and inspiration right here on Channel Africa. Available on the Channel Africa app.
2100 hours. A very good evening to you. Every weekday, Monday to Friday, for 60 minutes, we bring you the very latest developments from the heart of Africa to all corners of the globe, wherever you're listening from. We bring you the faces, the voices, and the perspectives that matter. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective, and I am Tsepiso Makwetla. This is Africa World Hour. Glad to have you with us. Please do share your thoughts or whatever's happening in and around your world. +27 634069126. That's the hotline number that you can reach us on. Just share your thoughts on WhatsApp, whether by voice note or text. And of course, you can catch us live on various platforms, including on DSTV audio channel 802. Let's go straight to your news headlines today.
1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And we start with this. More than 300 supporters and officials from Uganda's main opposition party have been detained since election campaigning began last month. This is according to the National Unity Platform, NUP. Security forces reportedly used tear gas and water cannons, as well as pepper spray at rallies in the capital, Kampala. Pop star turned politician Bobby Wine, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, is challenging 81-year-old President Yoweri Museveni for the second time after coming second in the last election in 2021. More from Mike Arerang.
It is true, the leadership of the National Unity Party has confirmed it is chaotic as I speak to you right now. And as I speak to you right now, the leader of the opposition, Robert Kyagulanyi, is currently on his way to Buikwe, where he's going to address huge gatherings. Thousands and thousands of police have been deployed. These supporters who have been arrested, so far they have not been charged, but they have been detained in various police stations, and it appears they'll be released maybe after the general election that will be on 15th of January 2026.
There's confusion over the number of students abducted from a Catholic school in Nigeria's Niger State last week. The state governor says that only 14 parents have so far reported their children missing, though that number could rise as some families live far from the school. Governor Umabago disputed the kidnapping number given by the school, saying that it had no proper records.
The school said to me in writing, missing, not abducted, number of missing students. So they are not certain whether these entire students are with the bandits, nor or are they in the bush, or because of the scare, some of them have gone back to their homes.
Israel's military officials have notified the family of Dror that his body has been returned from Gaza after forensic experts completed identification efforts. Palestinian militant groups brought the body back to Israel last night. The BBC's Yolanda Nell.
After forensic tests, the latest remains sent back from Gaza have been identified as those of Dror. The father of 3 was killed at his home in Kibbutz Be'eri along with his wife in the Hamas-led attacks on the 7th of October 2023, and his body was taken. Jihad says the body was found in Nusrat in the centre of the Strip this week. The bodies of 2 more hostages, an Israeli police officer and a Thai worker, remain in Gaza. The ceasefire requires Hamas to return all deceased hostages. In exchange, Israel has sent back the bodies of 330 Palestinians. Most remain unidentified.
Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has warned that China is stepping up its military preparations to take the island by force. He says Taiwan will introduce a $40 billion supplementary defense budget to underscore its determination to protect itself. China has also warned it will crush any foreign attempts to interfere over Taiwan, saying it has the ability to defend its territorial integrity. The BBC's Stephen McDonnell reports.
Basically, he said that China has been speeding up its military preparations to take Taiwan by force. He said that Beijing is continuing to increase its military drills and so-called grey zone harassment around Taiwan. There are even reports of such drills going on today. He said that for Taiwan, the most threatening scenario isn't actually war, but giving up. And he said that in his words, compromise to this aggression from the mainland would not lead to peace, but would actually lead to war.
And the number of people killed by floods in southern Thailand has risen to 33. The worst hit area was around the Hat Yai, which saw its heaviest rainfall in 300 years. Most of the city has been submerged, with a viral social media clip showing children walking along power lines to avoid the rising water below. The BBC's Jonathan Head has those details.
Volunteers are travelling from all over Thailand to bring flat-bottomed boats to help with the rescue effort. Army and police helicopters have been flying in medical supplies like oxygen to hospitals and flying out patients who need urgent treatment elsewhere. The unprecedented volume of water dropped by tropical storms this year has overwhelmed lakes and drainage canals. Officials expect the flooding, which has affected nearly 3 million people, to last several more days.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. The pulse of the continent in 60 minutes. Stay informed and inspired with Africa World Hour on Channel Africa.
7 minutes past 9. We certainly hope we live up to that name to you, staying informed and inspired. Unfortunately, it's the good, the bad and the ugly, but most definitely the inspiring and informative is what we want to lead with. So let's give you the latest on this. A dramatic power shift happening in Guinea-Bissau. The army there, officers announcing that they've seized control of the government, and the country's president has reportedly been arrested. As uncertainty grips the capital and communications remains limited, the military's actions have sparked fresh fears among citizens and observers alike. What began as a coup could plunge the nation into a deeper political turmoil, with urgent questions about stability, governance and human rights now hanging in the balance. Let's find out the latest now. We speak to Yusuf Abba, a journalist in Guinea-Bissau. Yusuf, a very good evening to you. Let's just first start with what happened and when.
Well, actually, nobody was expecting a coup d'etat or a change of government, because we just have a presidential election about a couple of days ago, and we expect the final result to come out in the next 24 hours. But the head of the presidential guard, of course, General Dennis, who is the head of the presidential guard, just marched into the presidential palace this morning and arrested the president. That they have taken over the government. There is no official reason given to the general public so now, but they've suspended the constitution. Borders still have been closed down. The PIGC leader also have been arrested. Domingos Simon Spera has been arrested also. So the situation is calm as for now. Everybody's indoors. we are looking at what is happening.
Yusuf, I'm going to see if we can boost your volume on this side, or because I am struggling to hear you, because you mentioned that several other people other than the president have been arrested. If you could just also clarify who those individuals are other than the president. Do we know where the president is being held, and what is his situation?
The president is at the military barracks, very close to his office, just by the beach side, where you have the main military barracks. And the head of the main opposition party, the PIGC, the World Popular Party, Dominic Goes Simon Pereira, has also been arrested. But we don't know the reason behind his arrest. But he was banned from taking part into the past presidential election. So we don't know the exact reason behind this, but don't forget, the man in charge was the leader of the presidential guard of President Mbalo.
And do we know about Fernando Diaz? He is one of those that declared victory during the elections. Has he been identified, so to speak, as a person of interest? Is there any danger of him being captured, arrested? I'm just trying to create some rationale in my head why these certain individuals have been seized by the military and not others, what the motive possibly could be.
So the situation now is very confusing, because even the chief of staff, the army chief of staff of Guinea-Bissau, was arrested before the president, and his deputy also was arrested before the president was arrested, including the minister of Interior. So when these people are arrested, this is the defense of the president. So if there is a coup d'etat in the country, these are the people who can counter it. So those who were supposed to counter were already arrested before the president. So it's a very difficult situation for whosoever is the authority in the country. I mean, it's very easy to capture people because there is no command chain. And the man who was controlling the presidential guard is the one in charge. So he knows all this area, he knows where and who to be arrested. So everybody is indoors, and some people in hiding, especially those who are very close to the president.
So those who have affected this coup call themselves the High Military Command for the Restoration of Order. In the statement that they read out, did they give a timeline, an agenda, or even express any allegiance to any particular entity or individual? Yusuf, are you still with us? Let's see if we can get Yusuf back on the line. But basically, a curfew has been instituted. And you can imagine the closure of all land, air and sea borders has been affected as well. That happened overnight, and the move really comes shortly before sustained gunfire was heard near the Election Commission's headquarters, the Presidential Palace and the Ministry of Interior and the capital Bissau. This is the information that we have, and the results of Sunday's presidential vote, which saw President Omaro Sissoco Mbalo against his primary challenger Fernando Diaz, was expected to be announced tomorrow in Guinea-Bissau. So what this means and what action can be taken. Over 200 observers were reported to have overseen, monitored that election, and it would be interesting to hear what they had to say. Let's see if we can get Yusuf back on the line. Yusuf, are you back with us?
Yes, and the network is very poor. I think it's better now again.
No, I can imagine. I can imagine that communication has been throttled or is probably near impossible. So, Yusuf, I was asking the question if those who have taken over the High Military Command for the Restoration of Order, have they announced what their agenda is? Is there a timeline? Have they pledged allegiance to any particular person or entity? Is there a sense of what they are trying to achieve with this takeover of power, illegal takeover of power?
As of now, no. As of now, nothing like that. They haven't given any deadline or what is their plan. Nothing. The only thing they said, they are in total control of the country and they suspend the constitution, the electoral body, everything has been suspended. That is what we heard from them as of now, and they're closing the border, land and sea. So, but let's wait and see what will happen in the next 24 hours. Maybe they will prepare themselves to give the public what is their plan.
So, Yusuf, the person who is leading the coup is actually the head of the presidential guard. Are you able to give us a profile, just to give us a sense of who he is and what his history has been politically?
I will not give you a full profile, but what I can tell you about him, he was one of the guys President Embalo well trusted. Embalo had faith in him. For Embalo, he was a loyal military officer to him, and we were friends before when Embalo was a military officer. And the last coup attempt on Embalo, he was one of the guys also who responded to that coup. So it's just a breaking news to the general public for this particular person or military officer to overthrow the president. Although you don't doubt people, but this is what happened. This is the kind of person nobody was expected to overthrow the president. He was like a clean man, a humble man, a very nice person, a very calm military officer, but today he is the one who is in charge. This is what I can tell you as of now for him.
Yusuf, Guinea-Bissau no stranger to coups over the years since independence. Just to give us a brief profile, a picture of what it has been like to live in Guinea-Bissau under these circumstances for those who have, and even your experience as a journalist, how this then will affect your work in reporting on what's happening on the ground, how people are contending with these new set of circumstances.
Yeah, Guinea-Bissau, I can say, was a virgin country coming from the roots, from a narco state. If you remember, the former chief of staff was arrested some time ago by the United States government, accusing him for drug trafficking. And Guinea-Bissau was a country everybody was accusing as the base for West Africa drug trafficking. But since the arrival of President Embalo, he has been fighting drug trafficking. And since the first election, over 700 kilograms of cocaine was arrested just immediately after the election, presidential election. And President Embalo and the United Nations drug officials, they have to burn down this drug. So if you look at the history of Guinea-Bissau, most of the military were involved in drug trafficking in Guinea-Bissau. And since President Embalo came in, there is no drug trafficking in Guinea-Bissau, and the money is not flowing between some of these officers, as we can say. So if you look at this kind of, the way this coup d'etat happened, one way we can say maybe this coup might be because of Embalo refused drug trafficking to Bissau. Maybe this can ignite this kind of coup d'etat. If not, from my own analysis, I see no reason for a coup d'etat when you have a presidential election and people are waiting for the result. And the campaign was goes on peacefully. There was no trouble. There was few irregularities, but there was no trouble. Everything was peaceful in front of Africa Union, ECOWAS. So
Yusuf, we're going to leave it there, but thank you very much. We have unfortunately run out of time. Yusuf, about a journalist in Guinea-Bissau where a coup has taken place. The president has been arrested, including, as Yusuf says, some of his closest aides who, according to him, could have done something to counter this coup. Curfew has been imposed as well, so there's virtually no movement. All the entry and exit points have also been shut down, so we'll keep a close eye on Guinea-Bissau. It brings the time to 19 minutes past 9.
Quer que a sua música seja tocada no Canal África? Quer que as pessoas saibam sobre o seu talento musical? Quem és? Onde és? Os teus principais interesses? E assim poderemos tocar a sua música no Canal África. Quer saber como fazer isso? É simples. Envie a sua música para music@channelafrica.co.za e deixe-nos tocá-la. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
And it is 20 minutes past 9. Well, let's continue with Africa World Hour. This time we talk about the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump. He sparked fresh concern among immigrant rights groups after he confirmed plans to retroactively vet refugees already admitted into the country. Officials said the move is aimed at tightening national security measures, but advocates warn that it could create fear, uncertainty, and possible legal challenges for thousands of refugees who believe that their status was secure. We speak now to Corey Peterson-Smith, the co-director of the New Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C. A very good evening, Jen. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly.
You have. I'm grateful to be here with you.
So there already was anxiety and a deep sense of insecurity for people who were legally in the country. How does this, make the living situation even more precarious? Because we've heard of ICE just randomly arresting people. What does this mean?
Well, that's absolutely right. Listeners probably know that there has been really an attack on immigrant communities here in the United States across the board. And immigrants of various statuses have been under attack, have been detained, are facing deportation. And so this latest move is about including people with refugee status in that as part of that overall attack on migrants. And refugee status, these are people who have come here to the United States on the basis that they're fleeing a dangerous political situation or otherwise a situation that has made it impossible to have a life where we're in their home countries. They have already faced, as part of the refugee program, they've been subject to a high level of vetting, actually. And so these folks who are here on refugee status would believe that their position was more secure than people of other statuses. And so this is severely distressing.
And what would the impact then be on the US's refugee regime, which already has raised questions about its direction, its legality, and missions system?
Right. I mean, this is really truthfully about dismantling the entire U.S. refugee program. And that is something that unfortunately is not new. We saw elements of this under Trump's first administration, not just in terms of lowering the cap on refugees that the United States allows each year, but really destabilizing the very notion of who even gets to count as a refugee. And so casting doubt, Trump would do this often, saying that people who are arriving at the border, who are claiming refugee or asylum status, they're not really refugees. They're not really fleeing. In fact, these are dangerous people. And so just attacking the very notion of who gets to be a refugee. And in truth, this is a years-long process, one that obviously this latest attack constitutes a major escalation of. But in truth, the term in between Trump's two terms, his previous one and this one, under Biden, there are also major attacks on refugees. I think this is part of, I bring that up to say this is part of a global trend. yes, the refugee program in the U.S. has been being dismantled, but in Europe, in Australia, in Canada, around the world, the whole notion of who gets to claim refugee status is being under attack, and Trump is really leading that charge.
So there might be greater scrutiny just in terms of particularly migration, not only in the United States, in Europe, as you've mentioned. But I want to understand what is going to happen. Has the administration been very clear on what it's dismantling in terms of its obligations under domestic and international refugee law? President Donald Trump has been clear that he wants to limit the number of foreign nationals in the United States, particularly those which he said several times he would denote as in being involved in criminal activity or criminals. But what is the main motive behind this? Because he has done something completely opposite with white South African nationals and granting them refugee status.
Right. So just to answer your first question, what does this actually involve? We're responding at the moment to a memo that was released by the Trump administration saying that people who had already been granted refugee status during Biden's term in office, that the administration would now like to review those people, would like to subject them to vetting and investigate whether or not they really deserve refugee status. So that's what they're saying, and the legality of that is incredibly dubious. These people have already, to access the United States as a refugee is a years-long process. As I mentioned, it already requires a great deal of vetting. It is in violation of U.S. law, which says actually that people have the right to come here first, and then while here, they have a year to claim refugee status to apply for that status. And certainly international law also grants people the right to access the country first and then apply to be a refugee. So for people who've already waited for years, have been vetted, and then have been accepted to now have their processes, or rather their statuses reviewed, yes, is in violation of the law. Your second question is extremely important. What is actually happening here? What is the purpose of this? And it's evident in so many ways, but certainly the elevation and the kind of the whole conversation about white South Africans and the Trump administration's invitation, really, of people from that background to claim refugee status, that tells us this is really about a very racialized notion of who has the right to access this country. As you said, Trump has framed this in terms of criminality, that this is about protecting Americans from people who are criminals. There's no evidence at all to suggest that the Biden administration allowed people who have committed crimes or are more prone to criminality to become refugees. That's not what's happening here. And so what we're seeing actually is the notion that to be a Black person or a person of color, to be from Latin America, to be from Central America, to come from Haiti, to come from Africa, there is something about that background, Trump is arguing, that is criminal. That people from those backgrounds, that is a kind of criminality, whereas people who are white South Africans are the victims of crime. This is about a story that Trump is telling, not one that's rooted in reality, but it is a story nonetheless that's a very racialized story, that essentially white people are good and helpful for the country, and people of color are a problem.
And just looking at that, the narrative, what should have been the moral imperative, protecting the vulnerable, how's that then going to pan out in policy? Is there something that will possibly go to Congress, or is the president using his executive powers to inform this? Because I'd imagine it's something that is also going to require human resources to effect it. Is that something that needs to be vetted and voted on by Congress?
That's an extremely important question. One thing, it should be noted that the U.S. refugee system at the moment, the one that's been constructed over years, really depends on an infrastructure of nonprofit organizations actually to support refugees and asylum seekers once they arrive. And so the U.S. federal government really does not, there's a kind of legal process whereby people are given refugee status. But once people arrive, they depend on faith-based organizations or other nonprofit organizations to actually survive here in the United States. And because Trump has already lowered the cap for accepting refugees, it means that these organizations have been forced to dismantle, their infrastructure. And so I put that out there to say that this is a bit more complicated. The actual implementation of this goes beyond policy. It is directly related to the question of policy, but there's a whole infrastructure here that's being dismantled. That said, I think that it remains a question whether members of Congress will make it their prerogative to actually defend these programs. And it should be noted that there's a range of programs really that people have access to be able to enter the United States legally. Right. One of them is called Temporary Protected Status, TPS, which is also being dismantled despite the fact that people from countries facing disasters and other things, are not able to return home. And it's been a mixed picture, actually, whether Congress has defended people with TPS status. And so we will have to see.
All right, Corey, thank you so much for your time and your insights. Corey Peterson-Smith, co-director of the New Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C.
mukumane ndine madaphiri la mulungu lililonse pa programu yathu ya malonje timacheza ndi anthu osiyanasiyana komanso kumvera nyimbo zosiyanasiyana ndiponso timapempha kuti inu muzititumizira malonje anu. Malonje ndi pamene timadekha ndeti kumana kuyambira 6 koloko kufika 7 koloko madzulo pano pa Channel Africa Chinyanja pamene tikuti lero ndi la mulungu ndi malonje ndipo ife tikupezeka pa www.channelafrica.co.za pamene mutatipeze komanso pa DSTV ndi Channel 802 malonje tikhale tonse.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. 1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And sometimes it just doesn't feel like we have enough time in that 1 hour. So much happening, but we do endeavor our best to make sure we bring you up to speed as best as we can with the major developments. And we're looking at the refugee landscape. So this time we crossed to Uganda, where it's officially been announced that it will stop granting refugee status to new arrivals from Ethiopia, Somalia and Eritrea. The government says the decision stems from sharply reduced donor funding and mounting most generous asylum systems. Those from the 3 countries who already have refugee status will not be stripped of it, but as of today, new applications from these nationalities will effectively be closed. We now speak to Victor Nyamori, researcher and advisor on refugees and migrant rights at Amnesty International. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Good evening to you. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you.
I've just been speaking to a colleague of yours in the United States, looking at how things are changing there, how President Trump is going to retroactively vet people who'd already received refugee status in the United States. And of course, looking at Uganda and how it's been dealing with refugees and relationship with the United States on accepting third country deportation. So how does this picture, this latest picture that we're highlighting, contrast, or at least how does it build on the picture of how Uganda sees refugees, asylum seekers, migrants, etc.?
Indeed, thank you very much. I think one thing we need to accept is Uganda has been a very good host for refugees in the region. It's one of the countries in the region that has been celebrated so much because refugee numbers at this particular time, we are looking at about 2 million refugees in Uganda, with quite a relatively a good freedom and rights within Uganda. Refugees are being registered, welcome, access to opportunity, including job market, access to freedom of movement, access to land. And so relatively, refugees are welcomed well in Uganda. But unfortunately, the statement given today by the minister in charge of disaster regarding the 3 states is quite shocking. Indeed, we understand the landscape for funding has reduced, but we have to accept the fact that people still run away from different issues and conflict and persecution, human rights violations, for them to seek protection in their country where they want to seek refuge. So it's quite unfortunate, and I hope the government of Uganda can be able to reconsider these options and allow refugees to be able to access Uganda. And blanketly condemning specifically countries from Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia is quite unfortunate also, because these countries are still facing quite a number of challenges within their front lines.
And is there any particular reason for, highlighting those 3 countries, singling them out as not being able to receive refugee status?
What the minister indicated was that these particular countries are not at war at this particular moment. But we have to be alive to the fact that refugees don't only come because of war or do not cross borders because of reasons related to war. Persecutions is a major issues on refugees, and individualized risks that people face make them decide to cross border and seek for refuge. So when you think of a woman who is facing gender-based violence in Somalia or Ethiopia and decided to seek asylum in Uganda, arriving today, will face challenges and not being registered as per what the minister indicated. This leaves them at a very precarious situation because when you are not registered, when you are not documented, the risk that you face in the country of asylum is quite more dire than the one that if you are already registered. This obviously will lead to irregular migrations within the region, but also across the continent, because people will seek for a place where they can feel at home and they can feel protected by the country where they are in.
It was just interesting to listen to your colleague that we were speaking to in the US, who is saying the reversal of refugee status of those who already had attained it under Biden administration actually will have implications beyond policy, but just in terms of operationally. But he was pointing out the fact that the funding and the services that are extended often come from NGOs. It's outside of government that raises the funds. So in this case, Uganda is, crying out, saying that it doesn't have the funding. So does that mean that the picture is different in Uganda, that it's more the government that is helping house people just in terms of the refugee protection services there, or could there be a different motive?
It's quite true. The funding situation in the refugee sector within Uganda has significantly reduced. As of today, or as of mid this year, UNHCR reported that it only received 17% of the funding that it had requested for the operation for the year. And as of August, they talked of about 25% of the operational funding. At the moment now, we have food assistance that has reduced within the refugee community. We have jobs that are mostly within that were receiving funding from, US aid have cut down. Quite a number of people are not operating in the camps, and refugees themselves are stepping up to take up these opportunities to be able to respond to their community. But the fact is, with no funding, obviously things are reduced. Food situation is not only affecting Uganda. We have situation in Kenya actually where food assistance has been reduced to the extent that a human being is given less than about 30% of their daily needs. And so that leaves them in a very difficult situation. So we hope, as much as the Uganda has issues with funding, it is important, we must not forget the protection principle and the idea that people cross border to seek for protection need to be accorded an opportunity to register, have their claims considered and assessed individually, not as a blanket, so that they can be able to see if they fall within the protections that are guaranteed in the 1951 Convention or the African Union Agreement, Convention on Protection of Refugees in Africa.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Victor Nyamori, researcher and advisor on refugee and migrants' rights at Amnesty International. It's exactly 20 minutes to 9.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wa zochitika pena paliponse.
Ndi anthu angati amene akudziwa za ndondomeko imeneyi? Ndi anthu angati ku Malawi? Ndipo ndi chifukwa chani anthu amene sakudziwa? Ndi alimi angati akudziwa za ndondomeko imeneyi?
Ndinganene zokuti amene amadziwa ndi amene ayitanidwa ku meeting.
Malawansi.
Tibwerere ku zimenezo timathapezeka zokuti tayitana alimi. Koma alimi aja akabwerera alibe kuthekera kufotokozera alimi ena azinzawo. Ndiye ngati ife mabungwe timatha kuwapanga support kuwapasa maalawansiwo, kuwapasa transport, tiyeni kulilongo mukapereke nawo ndithu information imene ikufunika kuchani kuzamalabo. Akabwerera sitapatsa indalama yokuti kayitaneni mudzi mwanu mu anthu mukafotokozera zomwe mwapeza. Kodi iwo anthu akumudzi angatenge nawo gawo bwanji? Ndiye mpomwe tikuperewera.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Nighttime radio, just the way you like it. On Channel Africa, where the night comes alive. 1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective. The pulse of the continent in 60 minutes. Stay informed and inspired with Africa World Hour on Channel Africa.
Minutes to 10. So we look at a highly unusual activity that has happened in Ethiopia just with regards to seismic action shifts. Scientists there saying that there's been higher seismic activity, but what has really happened is that a volcano which has been inactive for 12,000 years, can you believe it, 12,000 years, has erupted. And we speak now to Professor Atale Ayele, head of the Seismology Department at the Institute of Geophysics, Space Science and Astronomy at Addis Ababa, to speak to us about what has happened. A towering plume of ash and sulfur dioxide reported shooting up to an altitude of about 14 to 15 kilometers, blanketing nearby villages and sending volcanic gases billowing high into the atmosphere. So we speak now to Professor Ayele to tell us a little bit more about what we're seeing. A very good evening to you, Professor, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for having me.
So what has happened in this case about the highly gooby dormant volcano? Can you just give us in layman's terms why it's taken 12 years to see seismic action that has actually led to such, it seems like, extraordinary, natural changes?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is the most discussed subject, I think, why it's taking so long. It's in the classification of active and non-active or dormant volcanoes. If a volcano doesn't manifest itself as an active volcano in the last 10,000 years, it will be classified as dormant volcano. But from the images that we see in the neighborhood of Haile Gubi, there seems to be some fresh, lava flows in the geologic past. So two things are possible. It is indeed not active for the last 10,000 years, or it might have been active at some point in time, but it was not recorded or it was not noticed. It is just a jungle in the desert, in the Afar. It's a remote place. Maybe in the 500 years ago or some 100 years ago, technology was not as good as today, so it was not noticed. So that's also possible.
So if you say it's possible that it could have been active but nobody noticed, how far deep in the Earth's surface would it have had activity that was undetected? As in, just if one were to use the analogy of a belly, just how far deep down the belly of the Earth would this volcano have been active and not be noticed? Because just as I was describing what happened in this case, the amount of kilometers which it has shot up to release those gases, 14 to 15 kilometers up, that seems to me, and I'm not obviously a geologist or scientist in any form, but it seems like a lot of high pressure.
Yeah, that's very true. There's a lot of high pressure, but during the cyclic eruption and activities, it may not be the same magnitude as it is now. Maybe it can be just a small manifestation, which still makes it active, but the magnitude of eruption might be not as big as this one. But this one is, it has been accumulated for years, especially this, felsic eruption, very explosive eruption. So it's just ejected out with such strength. However, we never recorded any seismic activity related to this volcano with our stations, maybe not in the very immediate neighborhood, but in faraway places like some 100 kilometers distance. We would expect some magnitude like 3, 4 in the Richter scale, but nothing like that was recorded.
And in terms of the eruption and the explosion, what has been recorded for the nearby communities, because they've been affected? Are they in danger of further activity from this volcano that was thought to be dormant?
Well, one thing is, the area is not really highly populated. It's a very desert, hot places. Of course, there are the Afari tribes living by rearing animals, so the density of population is not that huge. So, but lucky enough, also the wind direction was towards the most inhabited area, in the northeast direction of the volcano. So, as far as we know, so far, no major casualties inflicted on the population nearby. So there is no major casualty that happened related to this volcano.
All right. So just finally, what is expected from this network that you have available to monitor this particular volcano and those around? Because you said there has been a number of seismic shifts in the area in Ethiopia.
Well, now the felsic eruption, which seems to be composed of volcanic ash, sulfur dioxide, and carbon dioxide, water vapor that has been injected into the atmosphere is already subsiding now. And as we were informed today from the site, there is just a very small smoke coming out and no magma flow from that source so far. So it is possible that probably magma flow may follow after some time, maybe in the coming weeks or months, something like that, or it may die out like that. So in any case, we have some seismic stations, not in the very immediate neighborhood, but good enough to detect what's going on. And also we have very good collaboration with our Italian and British scientists who observe the deformation from space, which is being used for disaster risk management for
Right.
classification of activity. Yeah.
Professor Ayelo, we hope that we will be able to speak to you then when there has been more information given on what has happened. Professor Atale Ayelo, he's head of seismology department at the Institute of Geophysics, Space Science and Astronomy at Addis Ababa. And we're talking here about a volcano in Ethiopia that has remained dormant for almost 12,000 years, and it has erupted for the first time within that period. And as we said, that it shot up ash, sulfur dioxide to the altitude of 15 kilometers up, affecting nearby villages. It's 10 minutes to 10.
Quer que a sua música seja tocada no Canal África? Quer que as pessoas saibam sobre o seu talento musical? Quem és? Onde és? Os teus principais interesses? E assim poderemos tocar a sua música no Canal África. Quer saber como fazer isso? É simples. Envie a sua música para music@channelafrica.co.za e deixe-nos tocá-la. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And we wrap it up with this. South Africa once again putting science at the heart of a national conversation with the Science Forum South Africa 2025. It gets underway. It's co-hosted by the Department of Science, Technology, Innovation, as well as the Science Diplomacy Capital for Africa. So this year's theme, it's called Igniting Conversations About Science, Placing Science, Technology and Innovation at the center of government, education, industry and society. And it'll set the tone for a gathering designed to bridge sectors as well as spark fresh collaboration. We're in conversation in studio today with chairperson of the Sidibeng Tivit College Council and co-chair of Wide for Wisdom Building Africa's research capabilities. That's Morongwa Mdletshe, deputy chairperson. Thanks for coming. So tell us about what is unique about this event. And I believe there's also another major international science summit taking place next week.
Yes. This science forum is the 10th science forum in South Africa. Science Forum is one of the largest science diplomacy events, on the continent. But what makes this very unique this year is the Wide for Wisdom seminar, which is a seminar that brought together researchers, innovators and entrepreneurs into one room to bring solutions and to talk solutions, to talk ecosystems, and that was just phenomenal.
So to people in stem cell studies, that makes a whole lot of sense, and you get the excitement out of it. But tell us how it affects us. Why is it important to us? Why should we be excited if we don't really understand what is going on?
In actual fact, I'm not in the STEM, and that's what made it so exciting for me. My background is in development, financing and incubating businesses. But we found that there was such a big gap between those researchers who are hiding behind their glasses in the lab, trying to make, something to solve our everyday problems and bringing those products and services to the market. And we decided that this is one way which we're going to bridge the gap by bringing those innovators, those scientists to the everyday people. And we called it the science of beauty. so that people can get to know, oh, okay, behind the skincare product that I'm using,
this is what happens.
This is what happens. And the scientist gets to know that, okay, in order for me to get my product, my amazing product to the everyday person, this is the conversation that I need to have, I need to have. So it was sort of like a bridging of two worlds between those in the STEM and those of everyday people and consumers.
So then how is government, just through its collaboration with private sector, going to unlock more investment, but also focus on strategic research areas? Because more and more young people are using AI or just being taught coding to allow them to be very instrumental in resolving the challenges faced in their communities, which is something beautiful to see. But there also is always that push that you don't have to be a big science brain, a big maths brain. So I just want to understand how you ring fencing financing to the right sectors, especially those that would previously have been underfunded.
Okay. I think the best way to answer is to tell you a story about Butlale Mpatlele, a young lady from the dusty streets of Mpatlele in Limpopo, who is a grassroots innovator and has, created a device that will be able to help gender-based violent victims, and as well as prevention and tracking, through a wearable. And this young lady tells a story about how when the idea came to her, she did not see herself as a technical person, as a scientist, but because of the funding frameworks that were the institutions like TIA, which were able to unpack the resources available for her, she was able to develop this in high school, and she's now doing her second year in university. So it goes to show that government is really doing some sort of work with regards to research and development, as well as incubating, the innovators. The question is, what is relevant to me? Is it relevant to you? You know that you and I are both, as women, always worried about our safety. So this is exciting for us. But someone else would say, but cancer is a silent killer. Can we invest, more in cancer? And we are saying that this conversation needs to be very holistic, have a broader societal approach in order to ensure that, the solutions that are being brought about are inclusive to society.
So how do you identify the projects that you would say are relevant? What does relevant really mean? Because it could be ensuring that it's a bankable project that will yield a return on investment, or it could be that one doesn't even really have the vision to be forward thinking about what a specific sector, community, landscape would need.
All right. So, our problems as a continent are quite diverse. We were just listening to different stories happening all over the world. So you would understand that there's a need for different types of innovations. There's a need for different, funding from ideation phase all the way to commercialization phase. But I think at the heart of all that we're trying to do with developing and accelerating science and technology is not looking for a return on investment today, but looking for a return on investment for future generations, to have the kind of technology in the future that will, that will help our children, that will help our children's children. So it can't just be about what can we capitalize or what can we profit today. In actual fact, we have to, as government and various institutions, put in to ensure that, incubators have a way to be able to grow their technology. But over and above that, I think all of society has different interests over science, technology, over innovations. And, with what is happening in AI, we have AI coming from different countries in the world, and that AI has shown its bias because of who are the programmers, who are the people who are coding it, and the solutions it brings then speak the language that is related to that bias. So we want solutions that are coming from Ramphahlele, we want the solutions that are coming from Lusikisiki, which will be able to generate responses that will be able to be accessible and understood by everyday people.
Very, very briefly, I still want to find out, how do you identify, because it's about an even spread, having a wider spread. How do you do that without relying on academia, without relying on private business? How do you make sure that you identify the right people, right projects?
Okay, so generally speaking, there are application processes for all the various, different types of funding, different types of technology at the different phases that they are at, and their evaluation systems. But over and about that, there are talent scouters that go around looking for the talent in different places, in the schools, in the research hubs, but also in the communities, because talent is everywhere.
Moronga, thank you so much for being in studio with us. Moronga Mklecha is the Deputy Chairperson of the Citibank Tivit College Council and co-chair of the Wide for Wisdom Building Africa's Research Capabilities Seminar. Brings the time to 30 seconds to African Diaries and Madame Shayla Ndukumana. Shall we grab a microphone and find out what's coming on African Diaries this evening? Because it is, I think it's a Wednesday. I thought it was Friday. No, when I spoke to you yesterday, I thought, yes, tomorrow's Thursday. Oh, Shemne. I have big ambitions in life. But here we are. It is a Wednesday, a day before Thursday. What's happening on this Wednesday?
Hump day, right? So midweek is where we find ourselves and we talk all things relationships. We're going to be looking at hybristophilia. That is an attraction to people who present criminal tendencies.
Excuse-moi.
Yes.
Linda, what's the name?
Hybristophilia.
Wow.
It's not emotional or trauma bonding. It's beyond that. It's when somebody displays an interest or there's always this gravitation, an affinity towards somebody who presents criminal tendencies.
Like bad boys.
Bad boys is a very mild thing.
So this one
real ones, when somebody pulls out a rifle and you're like, oh my goodness. Yeah. We're going to be talking about that in the first hour.
Sorry, just very quickly. The term hybristophilia does not connect with me running after a gangster.
It does not.
It doesn't.
It does not. But
it's
that
too
is
bougie to be like, oh, I like me heist kingpin. It's not. It's like giving hybristophilia, whatever it is you're calling it.
The psychological context.
Okay.
Yes,
all right.
So that's why.
All right. And then what else?
Then we're going to be talking about romantic pursuits during the festive season. So Shayla's in France. She's in Paris. She's at the Eiffel Tower. And she sees Jean-Pierre. And all of a Sunday, because there's the Eiffel Tower and the glistening twilight and the moonlight, Shayla falls in love. Can we really call it love is the question? Can we?
Look, I know around these hoods, these streets, people when it comes, they have a specific festive season package where your tourism, you must know, sis. If you're like at 6 or at 8 or whatever they do, you're like, highway, nah, that was just a festival fling.
Sheesh.
I don't know. That's what I've heard out in the streets.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that.
And that's it, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Shayla. And that's it from Africa World Hour. Thanks for joining us. Up until the next time. Good night for now.
Africa's very own think tank. This is